Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 431, and today we have Darren Patrick Friesen, and we're going to be covering his return, his group, which I think is really good. Some of the stuff they dial in on the topics and subjects, and we're going to be covering part this, not entirety, but just part of it. And part one is pretty extraordinary, and we're going to be covering some of that. But I probably will be bringing him back on to go over the whole book. But if you have not gotten this, highly recommend, and we'll go deeper into that when we bring them on. If you're watching, tell us where you're watching from. Smash that like button. If you have questions, please put them in the comment section, and I promise I will absolutely get to them. And without further ado, here's Darren. And also, lastly, before I bring him up, this episode is really not going to be on his biography, so to speak, or his journey. If you want to get more on that, I suggest you watch episode 158, where we cover all that extensively. This could be more on his return, what he's doing, what he's got coming down the pipeline, and lastly, of course, what I mentioned before, his book. If you want to catch another episode with him and Tom Sodas, which was absolutely incredible, that would be episode 170. All right, here he is.
Hello, everybody.
Hey there, how are you?
Hello, everybody. I'm very well, considering.
Yeah.
The last year and a half that I've had, I'm doing much better.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and great to have you on. You're highly respected in the community, those who know of you and all that, and they should be knowing you. So, okay, yeah, let's touch upon that. And again, I want you to share what you're comfortable with. Obviously, you took some time off. It sounds like it was beneficial. Anything you want to share on that?
I can go into detail on it if you'd like.
Yeah, that's up to you. I'm going to leave that entirely up to you. Yeah.
I was diagnosed with major depressive order and diagnosed PTSD the last almost year and a half up until probably the last 2 weeks. I had the shakes, anxiety attacks, forgetfulness when I'd enter a room, what I was there for. I've forgotten a lot of linguistics and words that I regularly use. I had a serious concussion from blacking out. I had a psychotic episode in the midst of that as well, which I don't want to get into because it was somewhat violent in nature. So that lasted probably almost a year and a half, which I was not predominantly training. And so the last 2 weeks have been kind of a blessing. I've been back to pretty much full capacity other than some cognitive lapses. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. If anybody has any questions on that, they're welcome to ask. I'm not a closed book, so I don't mind talking about it, but it's been a ride.
I just think I appreciate you. I just think it's incredible that you're sharing this, and I hope that some folks that are watching or that will watch, that they can get something from this, and that what you divulged and how you're still continuing. During that time, may I ask where the concussion?
Pardon me?
You mentioned the concussion. Was that from training?
No, that was from me blacking out and collapsing on our steel door head first.
Oh, no. Okay.
I think just as an aside, a lot of stigmas reside in depression. This was not something where you noticed a gradual decline in emotional stability. It was very physiological. So, I mean, it was progressive for about 6 months to the point where I was almost incapacitated fully and couldn't get off the couch most days. It was very perplexing because it wasn't one of those things where I was sad or the stereotypical depression that people often go through. It was something that hit very much physiologically and physically, and there was very little that could be done about it. We mixed and matched with drugs for a long period of time before we finally hit something that seemed to work. It was one of those things that was a heavy burden on my family as well. So training was absolutely out of the question. But yeah, it was quite something. Definitely some stories with it.
So you mentioned this started a year and a half ago, and like you said, it was uh, physically. I mean, like you. So it was like you didn't see this slow progression coming on, like just slow. I mean, it just kind of
It
boom.
was like sliding down a hill of wet mud. Inevitably, is the best anomaly that I can come up with, or the best
Okay.
metaphor that I can put together.
Yeah.
Still, there are some cognitive after effects that have lingered and continue, but for the most part, I think I'm back to as close to normal as I would like to be at this point. So,
Okay. Well, we're
started
go
training
ahead.
again about 3 weeks ago, which is was very cathartic. It was a blessing in disguise.
Hmm.
I don't think I really acknowledged how much training meant and how much it contributed to well-being and your overall state of affairs. I think we tend to focus on pragmatism and functionality a lot more than just doing things for fun. And the reason why we started off doing them and getting back to that has been very therapeutic, to put it bluntly.
That's interesting what you just mentioned because it's something I've been wrestling with as of late. Being so much in the functional lane or trying to be in that lane. And then I'm wondering if I'm shortchanging myself. Something I've just been thinking about as of late. And I'm not saying I have the answer or if it's even, a legit problem. It's just something I've been just thinking about very recently. And I think it was a couple posts that kind of triggered it. And I'm just wondering, am I too much in this lane? And I am having fun. It's wonderful. It's therapeutic. I mean, without it, I can't attest to like where I would be or in that. Um, but I mentioned this because you mentioned that was sometimes I guess we forget that like what originally brought us here. And what do you think on that? I mean, do you think many are do you think that's prevalent with many, or is it something that you experience?
Um, I've always been a fight functionalist. My entire stick has been reverse engineering the fight instead of engineering the system to fit the fight by putting a round hole or by putting a square peg in a round hole. So I've always been a functionalist, and I love lots of contact in training. It's one of those elements that I can't really do without. But at this point in time, getting back to the roots of why you train, in a very basic manner, has been something that I've needed to focus on as the other thing progresses. Do I think it's a problem? Um, I think that's probably in line for another question in terms of industry scope
And just
and
the
at
overall
the
industry,
macro level.
yeah,
If
community,
you want
yeah,
to get
yeah.
into
It's just
that, we can
yeah,
as well.
yeah. It's just something that triggered. Like when you mentioned that, I'm like, wow, deja vu. Something I've been wrestling with because much like you, I enjoy the contact. I enjoy the adversity. I enjoy experiencing the failures and problem solving
Yeah.
and refinement in the areas of deficit or refining in the areas that are somewhat they're succeeding and positive outcomes. But yeah, but much in your case, yeah, I can see why you're taking it those steps until you get back. Now, as far as your training, what are you doing in particular for starts?
Well, I generally mix FMA and Eskrima Criolla. Those are the two things that I focus a lot on during class.
Mm,
Um, I have a very pretentious, and I acknowledge that it's pretentious thing that I call what I do. I call it sport dueling and functional hoplology. Most of the systems that I've grown up training in are weapons based.
mm,
The thing that I focus on most is weapons through FMA, Eskrima Criolla, Kenjutsu, Lacan, and a number of different systems that I incorporate. I focus, the predominant end goal is sparring and fight functionality, as we discussed. I don't think that's overly prevalent. I think a lot of people avoid those elements like the plague, and I think we see that in the videos that are posted even on your page. Um,
Agreed.
which is fine if that's your end goal. For me, I can't do it that way though. And I
I
think a
can't
lot of
either. It's so funny. I can't.
I think a lot of people misconstrue the idea of sparring and resistance and pressure and tension and spot problem solving, you know, on the dime and all of these different things, cognitive elements. I think they're avoided like the plague a lot of the time, and it's misconstrued as something that's macho or testosterone filled, and that's not why I do it. It's healthy, it's trait building, it's attribute development. There are a lot of different things that go with it, and I think it's fun on that element as well. And at the end of the day, I think that's, you know, the end goal that you're trying to achieve. But I don't consider myself a macho, testosterone-driven trainer in any way. I just really like contact, and I feel that it's an element that's completely necessary in your training. And if you're lacking it, or if it's something that you're scared of, or there's some psychological barrier there, I think you're doing yourself a disservice. It's fine to do the other thing, but I think there's far too much flash in FMA. I think there's far too much show. And I think there's far too much drilling for the sake of just drilling. And, you know, a lot of people get into this, you know, the fight functional crowd get into this Hubad sucks and Sombrada sucks and Contrada sucks and all of these different things. And what I've found is there's a way to make them fight functional. You have a progressive ladder that you utilize during each of those drills where the contact gets progressively elevated. And I mean, I don't know if you want to ask another question to prevent me from rambling, but I mean,
No, I'm loving what you're saying.
And drills. They're very base drills that can be added upon and put into a context where they are completely valuable to the thing that you're training for and the end goal that you're working towards.
You know, I love what you're saying. And matter of fact, I think it was just the interview I just had, either last interview or 2 interviews ago, and and I was talking about, I'm not sure how we got there, but I think I mentioned specifically that I think FMA, I think I was talking in relation to some knife systems, and yes, it was knife, as far as the example on the conversation, and how I think a good chunk of FMA has gotten overcodified with the drills and all that, and getting kind of farther removed from kind of what happens out there. And when I look at, and I use knife because that's what I mostly do, and I was using that as an example in that. I'm sure, you know, obviously that could be said for stick and everything else, but I agree with you. And, you know, as far as the drilling and all that, and I think, like, for instance, Sombrada and Hubad, which you mentioned, in other words, I've taken a way to make Sombrada where it's functional, where you can put put different defensive movements, looking at before, during, after, you know, and stuff like that. And it can absolutely be done, as you well know. I guess my question to you is twofold. Why are we not seeing others explore this, generally speaking, and is it due to, the second part being, is it due to just giving what you got down the conveyor belt and not really looking outside that? Or is it basically being in a comfort zone, not really wanting to fail, ego, whatever other expletive adjective you want to use? You know, what do you think?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think people get in their comfort zone and it's like that conveyor belt that you said. I think people are fed a certain type of thing and told that it's an attribute drill or something along those lines. And they get in their comfort zone and regurgitate the same knowledge that they've been given to, whether it's under the name of protecting style or system or art, or just a lack of will to really experiment with the drills and push them to the next level. We do a drill, just for instance, as an example, with a dulled folder, where the other person has boxing gloves on, or focus mitts, or whatever you want, and you start off doing regular Hubad until somebody does a push at the elbow, create space while the other person comes back in and reattacks, reconnects, and tries to enter and hit while you're trying to deploy a blade under pressure. It's just one simple example of things that you can do to really push these drills to the next level and really experiment with those particular attributes. My question is always when somebody tells me and gets really defensive over one of these things and tells me they don't like the way that I'm doing it, or they want me to expand on what I'm doing, their fallback is always it's an attribute drill, or it's a drill to develop skills. And
I hear that more as
defensiveness
opposed to the
comes,
attribute.
the defensiveness comes when you ask them what attributes specifically, fight functionally, pragmatically, is it developing? What are those attributes? What is that skill that you're developing particularly? And I have a very rare time where somebody can actually answer that question and go, this is what it's developing. These are the skills that it's developing. This is why I do it in these particular contexts. I think you don't get a lot of that. I think people have just fallen on the metaphor that it's an attribute drill or it's a skill development drill. And it has to be more than that. You have to be able to understand what that drill represents, why you're actually doing it other than for just systemic value, and what you can add on to it to make it, something that's tangible under pressure, in that context.
I agree with everything you're saying. I guess what I'm wondering is, going back, I guess I'll use the conveyor belt again. The reluctancy, I guess, to look outside a box,
It's a good analogy.
I look at some of these systems, the bigger systems, and I see these new folks coming out, just watching, like you mentioned, videos and FMA discussion, other groups. And I'm seeing these, this younger, I guess, generation, if you will. And I'm just looking at this recycling of material, and they're just doing this. And it must be a point where they can't really identify what they're doing. So my question to you is that their fault, or is it what they've been fed to them? And until they're exposed to somebody like you, for instance, or somebody that can explain that, where's the blame fall, if there's blame to be held?
That's a good question. I'll give you an example. We had, when I was growing up in FMA, we had what was the standard curriculum, where we would function during class time and the information would be transmitted and regurgitated and repeated and replicated and whatnot. And after a certain period of time, we developed a kind of a fight club. I don't want to put it in that context because it wasn't that brutal, but I mean, we had a group of military, law enforcement, security personnel, very experienced martial artists that after that period was over, we would take it out and pressure test it. And that was on us. We didn't put that as the fault of the instructor, but we wanted to take it to a different level. We were experienced enough that we knew that there was a gap in between one thing and the other. And we wanted to play to find out what context worked with what systemic value that we could incorporate or implement into that. So I think it's on the student if they want to put that into a context where they can take it to the next level and experiment with play. And I think that's a really important element. And we did have an instructor or multiple instructors who were conducive to that. They condoned that and propagated it as being the next level. I don't think every instructor has the dynamic with beginner students, advanced students, middle level students, that they can be responsible for everybody taking it to the next level, or you devolve into a fight club where you don't get any students other than a very select few that are intense and self-focused. So I would say it's more on the responsibility of the student that after they've hit a certain level to take it to the next progression state where they can really experiment with the tools that they've been given.
I've asked a few people this before, and that's come up. It's on students. Some people say, well, the instructor doesn't enable that or create the setting for that. Sometimes it falls on them. You touched upon something as far as the instructors go, that they're allowing that. Hey,
It's
you want
easy.
to do
It's
that
easy to
class?
blame instructors. Sorry to cut you off, Dean. It's easy to blame an instructor
I know.
for you not wanting to take it to your next level in your own personal progression, and that's, to me, that's your responsibility.
Yeah.
You know, the responsibility of the instructor is such that you want him or her to be a conducer, somebody who promotes you taking it to the next step if you want to in that extracurricular manner. And I think there are a lot of instructors that don't. I think insecurity is a major thing in martial arts.
That's what I was going to lead to. Yes. You know.
Yeah, I think that
totally.
an instructor's insecurity or personal fallbacks can be a detriment to the student's evolution. That I do think.
Absolutely. I mean, actually, to the point of holding them back in their potential growth. I mean, you know, when I look at, I don't want to, you know, I guess indentured servitude, depending on how bad the setting is. But I think there's some instructors that don't want that. And I think it's with intention. I think there's some instructors just don't realize they can do that or let the students do that. I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just not really thinking of them fully, or, you know, depending on how they came down that conveyor belt and what they were exposed to. But well, I totally agree with you. You're responsible for your own journey and to take it where you want and all that. So, you know, I would agree with you that it ultimately falls on student. Although I do think there's some instructors with the ego or the fear of that they might find stuff or come up with conclusions that are going to challenge them and inferiority and et cetera and stuff. But
pure personal insecurity and fear.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow.
And I think we have that a lot in martial arts at this point. I think it's endemic to training. I mean, that's another question entirely, but you have to look at the profile and the type of dynamic that draws people into martial arts in the first place. And I think a lot of that draws a very insecure, macho, alpha type of male in the first place that has their own deep-seated insecurities and fears. Mm-hmm. And when you couple that in a group, I think that's where you get a lot of that division. In you see that even in FMA, where there's a major division on different groupings that rival other different groupings. Yeah. And you also see it in, you know, I always say that the dynamic is twofold. One, you have people that through that insecurity have to affiliate with somebody with name value, whether it's through seminars, videos, posts online, participating in you know, whatever it takes to affiliate with a greater power. Mm. And line themselves up. And then you have the other end of the spectrum where people tear down anybody else that puts out content online without, you know, name or face or their own content to back it up. So I mean, you have the polar opposites that are very much division creating. And it's unfortunate. I think it's a byproduct of the elements that draw certain people into the martial arts in the first place.
To begin with.
There are very few people that are a voice of reason in the martial arts these days that I find, especially online. And I think those voices need to be heard. They're few and far between. And, you know, once people find out about them, you know, leading up into the page that we do as well, it's named collaborative for a very specific reason, based on the fact that we have a ton of different specializations and a different type of experienced people that contribute to the ongoing day-to-day interaction that we have. And when you get a bunch of people like that in one place, special things can happen. You have a fountain of information coming down the pipe on an almost daily basis where people can contribute in a safe and productive way without having the stereotypical stupidity arguments that we generally have on Facebook.
I know. And and we're going to go into your group, which I think is incredibly special for all the reasons that you just mentioned. And I wish FMA discussion, I have to try to get that I think it's just too big and too far. And it just happened. You know what I mean? Not with intention. It just. But yeah, why is that? Why you kind of touched upon as far as that dynamic when guys do that, and the worst that drives me nuts is you'll see somebody post a video, regardless of what it's about or the value. But much to your point, you'll see these people that will critique it or comment, and then all I'll do is I'll make a point to go kind of check them out, and they have like nothing. They'll have like no videos. I mean, just nothing, like just blank. You know what I mean? And yet they're the first ones, generally speaking, to just critique. The other thing I found is that the people that kind of complain, whine, are generally people, and again, these are just generalizations, certainly not across the board, that are ones who really expose themselves to failures, pressure testing, science lab, all the above. And I've really been paying particular attention to this over the last 2 years, and I'm using my group as kind of the example and where I'm drawing some of these conclusions. And that generally speaking, these guys are the ones who are negative, are ones who just don't do anything. Or when I look to see if they do anything, nothing to show. They don't post anything.
Nope.
And then I see the ones who don't interact like this or don't, partake in these conversations or this nonsense are functionalist. Is that, have you noticed that?
Yeah. Generally, yeah. Did I cut out there?
Oh, no, you're good. No, you're good. Yeah.
I always look at online engagement as kind of a fluid virtual conflict management arena.
I like that.
I tend to act the same way online as I do as close as I am to my
the consistency.
I don't separate the two. I don't try and get away with things online that I wouldn't.
You wouldn't say the person right in front of you?
Forward in person. Mm-hmm. I also think, apart from the conflict, kind of a real-time conflict management thing, it's also an opportunity to profile. And I do a lot of profiling with people through their comments on the page and on different pages that I'm on as well. So I think if you tend to look at it with those two elements present all of the time and every time you interact, it becomes an effort in real-time skill. And far too little of the time. I mean, we've been fortunate. We have a lot of experienced people. So, I mean, most of the people are fantastic in terms of what they post and how they interact with others.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people take liberties that they otherwise wouldn't in real life.
Would not. I totally agree on that.
I don't think that people look at this as an actual opportunity to utilize some of the skills that they've built up or supposedly built up through the years. And I don't think they take that opportunity to profile what potential aggression or fear or anger looks like in real time, online, virtually. It's just an opportunity to talk louder than somebody else. And I think when you look at it with those two things present, like I tend to do, I think you get a broader perspective of how things really function and how people interact on a much more personal level. I mean, we're safe. You're not going to get in a fight with somebody online, but
you're not going to meet in the middle of the.
We're all inevitably safe. I mean, the idea of the online challenge match to me is always ridiculous because it's so easy to project and put it out there and say it, and it's all bullshit. I mean, I've never seen anybody talk through on something like a challenge.
Yeah, that you actually saw them actually.
It's the safest way to project machismo or aggression without actually having to do anything about it. But I think those elements, when you look at it from that conflict management or conflict resolution position and try and merge your online presence or persona with who you are in real life, plus the profiling element, I think you have valuable tools that you can go on and engage online with. I look at it as a problem-solving method. If somebody posts something that I don't like and it's not hurtful to the rest of the group or potentially feeding out negative information, I usually let it slide.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not something that I'm willing to engage every person that disagrees with me in a certain vein. That being said, there are some comments that you have to enforce as an admin or a moderator where if it's feeding bad information to the group, you have to address it. And I try and address it as cold and calculated and direct as possible, which is my persona in real life as well.
Yeah. I learned that the hard way, to be honest with you, in the discussion. I was like, oh, I was kind of, well, not kind of, I was naive. I'm thinking like, these guys, they'll act accordingly. They're adults. And in the beginning, it was fine. And then I was just putting out fires left and right. And then finally, I put rules in. And of course, you got to freaking enforce them, because otherwise, if you don't, I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. But
Yep.
then the removal of people. And then you finally get it to where you want, because people begin to realize, like, hey, this is not the group for that. And then once in a while, you got to go in there. But if you set the tone and all that. But back to this whole social.
It's like real life.
Yeah.
Once you find it's really, when you choose to look at it like it's real life, it's real life.
Yeah.
And once there's a certain culture, age culture, living culture, whatever the case may be, established, it's very easy to self-police inevitably. Things tend to handle themselves well, and every once in a while when you put out a brush fire, it's fine and things are reestablished, and every so often that's a necessity. But if you start looking at a page like it's a real entity, a real living, breathing entity where you engage with different people from different cultures and different races and different religions and different whatever backgrounds, you have a vast array of people that can get confused or mismessaged on different terms that that you're trying to get across. So it's very, very easy to miscommunicate something or mismessage. But I think that's one of the joys as well. We live in that kind of a time period where you can utilize conflict management skills online and in real time, if you choose to do so. I mean, if that's your philosophy, then great. If not, then yeah, I mean, every second opportunity that you get, you're going to be in a disagreement online.
Yeah, I mean, right. You'll find enough of them.
And there's always conflict when you're willing to find it.
Yeah, if you're looking, if you want to spend your day replying to people that you'll never meet, and I mean, yeah. Overall, since we're kind of on the social media aspect in relation to martial arts, whether it's FMA specific or not, obviously there's some benefits to social media and all that. You get to meet and talk with like-minded people that you never would be afforded to the opportunity without it. But do you feel social media also has, in some regards, kind of, I don't want to say ruined, but weakened martial arts and the etiquette, the whole thing of respect, reform, and
the
all
etiquette?
that?
Yeah, I would say definitely.
Okay.
There is a possibility that has contributed to that kind of decline in etiquette towards other people. I think it can be a very useful tool as well, though. I mean, I've started engaging with a lot of people from the page that I never would have had a chance to interact with otherwise, and you can expand your horizons and evolve your training in certain ways by certain things that you can exchange with other people. I think we live in a time period now that, in the entirety of human history, we've never been able to interact or have mass information exchanged between different groups of people that can really propagate and help promote something in a positive light, which is why all the negativity to me is extremely unfortunate.
Yeah.
But it's also a byproduct of, like we said, the people that martial arts or self-defense or combatives generally draw. I don't think that's avoidable in any way. I think it's a matter of how it's managed. For me, there's no way on the page, on yours or mine, where you're going to obliterate arguments and everybody's going to live in this oasis of peacefulness.
Yeah.
You're always going to get that kind of, interaction. It's unavoidable. It's just a matter of how it's managed. But that's also an element that transfers to real life. you're always going to have conflict or some kind of aggression in some manner, shape, or form, or violence. Violence with the expanded definition of it in microaggressions or people crossing your boundaries or any kind of level of these things. And it's how you choose to manage it. And in that way, I think social media can be a human additive in that way.
Yeah, agreed. Well, your group, I think your group is really special. I think it's around 1,000 members or so.
Yeah, I think 1,200 or 1,300
Yeah,
somewhere.
and are
It's
you
small.
so how? So you came about how do you, before we get into the choice of name and your goals for it, what who do you look for to be part of it? Like you're just it's not a floodgate. I mean, it doesn't seem it like far as anybody can just join.
Yeah, anybody can just join. It is a group that is more designed for experienced people and people that have specializations in particular areas. I mean, we have doctors and neuroscience scientists, biomedics, experienced martial artists, ex-doormen, military, police. So, I mean, you have a vast array of different people that have specializations in different things. We promote anybody to jump in. It is more designed for the experienced demographic, but that doesn't limit people from jumping in and learning and kind of participating in the way too. But that's kind of how it started. Was I wanted a more experienced page that could really satisfy my urge to learn and to share information and see how consensus is built between different people in different parts of the world on different things, anti-violent or counter-violent.
Counter-violence. And just for everybody that's watching, and it's Human Collaborative?
The Human Protection Collaborative.
I'm sorry, Human Protection Collaborative. Okay. Yeah, folks, if you should check it out. There's, I mean, I think some of the posts in there, I don't get to comment as much as I like to just with everything going on, but I think they're just such intriguing and thought-provoking posts in there. I think it's, of all the groups, weapons-based oriented groups or like that, I think it's probably, as far as I know, probably the best one. I just think I think it's that special and unique in there.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
we have really good moderators, really good participants, though. I mean, lots of guys contribute in an extremely positive way, and there are a lot of really knowledgeable people that contribute on a daily basis, and a lot of very intelligent people too.
All the above.
And like I said, with the volume, we'll have less argument than you will on a page that has 13,000 people. There still are, that being said, but we tend to put the brush fire out as quickly as possible, or let it play out and let people, have their say and be done with it. But yeah, anybody who's listening that wants to join, all you have to do is fill out, I think it's 3 questions that Malcolm designed that to enter, and that's about it.
Yeah, I highly recommend it, folks, if you're watching. Just in fantastic posts and replies, and again, much like you said, they're incredibly educated folks in there. Yeah, sometimes I'm like reading some of those replies, and you can just tell it's just like wow. Yeah. And
yeah, we're very fortunate. There's a lot of experienced people that jump in and share their knowledge willingly and without restraint. And the more you can build a page where there's less conflict affiliated with it, the more people are going to share in that kind of an open and honest way, and that knowledge is going to be disseminated to different people. I think having a very diverse hive mind too is extremely important, where people, we tag some people on posts where we go, I don't know what the answer to that would be. Who can we tag that would be willing to participate and share that kind of knowledge? And we generally at this point haven't had any lack of finding somebody that's really good in that particular area. So yeah, it's been good. And it's been very therapeutic for me too in the last couple of months, to be honest.
Yeah, your post, I mean, I've seen
infiltrate myself back into the industry.
Yeah, I think you've done it. I see you're posting in there a lot, and they're just fantastic. I really enjoy them. Yeah, so folks, again, I highly recommend it. I think you'll really enjoy the content in there. It's funny. I think in the beginning, that's what I really wanted for my discussion, but then it just got like over 5. Now it's at 13 something. It's just so far removed that. But I guess the benefits that people can share their promotional stuff in there, whether it be a seminar or upcoming online thing, or so I guess that obviously benefit an overall contribution to the community. But some of the posts are coming in there, they don't they're not violating the guidelines, but at the same time, some of them are just not the most pertinent or educational.
We don't allow advertising.
Okay, well, there's all right. That could be it, But then I think
No
I would.
advertising.
Yeah.
If you want to promote something that's free or something that's really taken a lot of investment of your time, like a book, or if you want to post videos or break down violent circumstances or events that have transpired in real time, or you want to promote something that's not financially beneficial to you, like a podcast or something like that, we have no problem with that. But advertising for seminars or trying to recruit students is a no-no. That'll get you banned usually fairly quickly.
That's good that you're doing that. That's good. Like, to me, it's just so far because, one of the things I went when I had my discussion was to propagate and grow, hopefully, unity, which naive again on my part. So I kind of had to let that come in there because I'm trying to grow. You know what I mean? Like, and let folks showcase what they're doing and all that. So, I think I went in with too many plausible objectives. I don't know. But we got Gabe here. Hey, great interview. What's the group name to join? It's Human Protective Collaborative. Yes, you should definitely check it out.
Protection Collaborative.
Hold on, excuse me. I'm sorry, Darren.
Oh, no problem.
Sorry, dogs. Those.
I have those too here. Don't worry. And they bark all the time.
Because like usually if I put the headphones on, but I didn't think of that today. But at any rate, so yeah, folks, definitely check out that group again. Before we get into the book, so okay, I know you're starting to get back into training, all that. What are you future objectives like? As far as your personal training, like anything you want to go deeper in, or new systems that you might want to experience or be exposed to?
I'm more worried on cultivating the systems that I've already trained in exclusively. I think that's kind of my focus for the next at least few years. We're going to see where it leads, but knock on wood. I want to really hash out Eskrima Criolla. My FMA is continually evolving, both the system that I originally trained in and my own. Some of the other peripheral systems that I've trained in, I haven't really given a lot of lifeblood to yet. So I think those are going to be the things that I work on for the foreseeable future.
Okay. Your FMA system that you said your own, like, tell us about it.
Which one? Mine or the one that I originally started in?
Yours.
Mine is something that I've cultivated for probably the last 20, 25 years. It is fight functional. There is a ton of contact and pressure, and well, you've seen the videos that I post on YouTube. So I mean, for anybody who, for lack of a better term, thinks that I'm talking out of my ass, they can go to the YouTube channel or the Eskrima Criolla Canada channel, Canada Costa Rica channel. Facebook page and take a look at what we do. But it's predominantly designed to lead up to the fight. Okay. And how we can best utilize those developing skill sets and that drill dynamic to increase one's ability to participate in that without fear and without being overtaken by adrenaline. So, I mean, that's kind of the focus, is that we still do a lot of the same drills that a lot of FMA guys do, but we've added on to them and kind of evolved into a way that leads, you know, to those skill sets that are specifically designed for that arena.
And what weapon configurations? I mean, pretty much everything, edge, blunt.
Yeah. Yeah, we do pretty much everything, flexible, projectile, and everything kind of in between, improvised. So, I mean, we cover the gamut. Nice. I at this point in my, I mean, I'm 51 now. So my years of heavy grappling outside of, as it pertains to the standing grappling and ground fighting in relation to weapons, is probably null and void at this point. My boxing is not going to improve at 51, so I'm not going to be investing a lot of time in it. As I was telling a friend just this morning, I always knew what I wanted.
Yeah.
I was very fortunate when I started my martial arts career, what would be considered late, probably in my early 20s. And I knew exactly what I wanted. I knew the systems and styles that would be adherent to my body and my body type and the way that I move and the way that I potentially wanted to move, and invested serious time in those, knowing that those were the things that were going to take me late in life and not be something that broke my body down on the way there. So the systems that I partake in now are things that I can do until late in life without breaking my body in any way. I think I move differently than a lot of FMA guys. I don't know, you've seen me move, but I've often been told that my upper body is square, my feet are constantly moving, and movement, footwork is a big, big thing for me. The minute I can't do those things anymore is the day that I'm probably going to pack it up. That's how important those elements are for me. So you've seen me move, so you know that that's incredibly important to me.
Yeah.
And I put a lot of emphasis on that. To me, no footwork, no fight.
Yeah, especially when weapons get involved there, right? I mean, just can you, what's your, just for the folks that are watching, I put it in the as far as the advertising of it on in the FMA discussion there, but your YouTube channel for folks that are watching.
My YouTube channel is Darren Patrick Friesen.
Okay, easy enough. Yeah, folks, honey, check it out. Some really neat stuff on there. And plus your training apparatuses. I always got such a kick out of the stuff that you designed to improve upon, you know, whether it was attributes and all that. I get a kick out of what you just so much thought put into them, you know.
The pendulum system.
Yeah, I just think it's, you know, wow. All right.
Yeah, you're supposed to. You said you were going to steal my YouTube channel, waiting for it to be a different DF than it usually is.
Oh, I posted on there, but I could definitely share some videos for sure. Yeah, I would love to. You mentioned something I found really interesting. I think you put it in.
Yes, it's on Patrick Friesen, but you can scroll down and.
Yeah.
Look.
You put something in your blog, but you also touched upon it in the book, and I found it really interesting because I'm a big fan of the fence, and the reason being is I just think it gives you the latitude of coverage and be able to commit to a defensive structure, offensively, and etc. But you were also, what I found was really compelling and interesting how you might not get it up. I mean, depending on the engagement and all that. So I'm going to let you speak on that further. But it was really interesting. A couple things that really made me think about and how I'm going to further develop this with my students. So what say you?
The fence.
Correct.
Fencing and framing are two things for me that I utilize. I do, and I would be lying if I said that I didn't. But I prefer active hands to the static thing that we stereotypically see. When I have guests here, we own a bed and breakfast, so I engage with different people from different cultures all the time. And some people like to get existentially close. And I talk with my hands a lot. My hands are usually higher than the other person's. My hands are constantly in motion. So if something does need to happen in a real-time thing, they're already moving. And by moving those hands in a serpentine motion, you're already in the motion of striking if you need to be. They're already hard to perceive from the other person in terms of where they are and how to gauge distancing and do those different things. So, I mean, to me, that fencing and framing have to be active. You can have static fencing or framing, you can have active framing, and you can have dynamic framing. And I think one of the things that we usually tend to see in the self-defense world is the static frame or the static fence, where it's just the hands up and, hey, I don't want any trouble, bro. And it's not that easy. And especially if you can't communicate in the language where here I can speak Spanish now. But I don't get triggered by insult as easily as I do in Canada or in the States, because the language and the slang that comes with it aren't things that are recognizant with me. So I worry more about the dynamics of body than I do of verbality. And I think one of the problems that people have is with those static frames, that it just becomes this effort in futility. And what we do is we do three-dimensional dynamic interview training, where me being the interviewer, I dictate what's said, and it's based on what you say. So if you go, I don't want any trouble, bro, and I go, I'm not your bro, you're already in fucking trouble, and I don't give a shit what you're going to do to get out of it. And I push the guy. All of a sudden, that static frame is ruined. And you see lots of people folding at that point going, well, I thought this would be sufficient, that, you know, as long as I keep distance and I have that space and I do this thing here and respond with this static neutral remark, that all is going to be taken care of. And when you add that three-dimensional element, you find out from different people immediately that that's not the case. You can ruin a frame or a fence very quickly just by utilizing verbal skills. So, I mean, that's what we do with the three-dimensional thing, is we have active frames. We have interaction between two people where it's dictated by the events that happen in that scenario. I don't give static responses. I don't do the, hey, I don't want any trouble, bro. Hey, everything's cool. Hey, can I buy you a beer? I don't do those things. That's not how it works in reality. It's three-dimensional in reality. It's not one-dimensional. So without rambling, I mean, that's an important thing to me. And I just wrote an article on the page about that too, about fencing and framing.
That's what I'm referencing. I thought it was really, and that's why I'm bringing it up, because much like you, I do mock drills with my students, and I do use the frame, but I do, and where there's, much to your point, different dialogue, questions, engagements, and all that, where you're kind of mentioning that one kind of is kind of dictating as far as the interviewer and that. But what I do tell my students, and I'm really interested in what you say, because I think, again, I found your article fascinating. I do make them a point where, you know, whether they're, and I do like your idea of the hands moving like that. I agree with that. But from the frame, like, there's a threshold, like, hey, look, you can't let them get close because now they're going to get to jump on you like that. And where this frame does go into an offensive movement. What are your thoughts on that?
About it going into an offensive movement?
Great one, yeah.
I think the minute you get stuck where adrenaline is a factor and the hands aren't moving, it becomes a potential risk where you're stuck in place, and that fence or frame, if it's not active, can potentially bite you in the ass by not moving the way that you want it to. I practice that here when I'm utilizing my hands. When I'm in motion like this, it's one of those counter adrenaline things too, where if I'm in motion or taking steps with my feet, or angling off to a certain person who's already shown that they're hostile, not necessarily violent, but hostile, I'll practice those things on the fly, where my hands are in motion. I'm taking a step to the left or to the right. I'm angling my body in a certain way. I'm turning my head, engaging my neck and shoulder muscles as well, where you're alleviating some of the effects of the adrenaline. And if your body's already in motion, it's much easier to implement that motion if it's needed. So that's just my take. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, what people are doing, other people are doing is wrong, but I found that here in a completely different culture than I'm used to, these things like spatial awareness and closeness of body and tone and even the things that trigger adrenaline or that would trigger adrenaline in your home country are a little bit different here, and the dynamics are a little bit different. So whereas somebody here stands instinctively closer than they would otherwise, because spatial distancing here is much less, which takes a long time to get used to. Bodily contact is another thing that's very normal. And somebody touching your shoulder and you brushing that hand off because you would have done the same in Canada here is potentially very offensive. So, I mean, you have to factor those elements in as well. Where I am now in Central America, that's one of those things, that bodily distance, the close talking space, how loud people talk. They talk louder here than they do in Canada. They're more active with their hands. They get closer to you. Those are things that all have to be factored in that three-dimensional training. And if you're not addressing that and you're still stuck in the stereotype that you're used to from where it works, where you were previously, it's not going to work here. So that's just my take. Just something to think about for those of you out there who are listening.
I think that's fantastic. Like you said, the culture, like where you're living. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you know, some of the things that you brought up, I wouldn't initially think about unless it was asked of me, like, hey, well, what would you do based on this culture here, where people do get closer to you and where touching is a thing of the norm.
Yeah.
You know, like I can tell you right now, like I don't like people getting close to me. I
don't generally either.
You know what I mean? Just from, we know how quickly, you know, things can go wrong. And and like you said, that brushing of the shoulder, I'd probably be like, you know, what you said down there, that could lead to, you know, obviously a potential problem, you know what I mean, what you're doing. The escalated voice, I mean, I probably would get used, that would be the first thing I would get used to, I guess. But I think it's fascinating. Like you said, you tailored your fence and frames, obviously based on the culture and in there, which, yeah, you should do, obviously. I love the aspect to where reducing your tension and all that by like just kind of being in motion, you know? I like that.
Yeah, it's just a subtle thing, and it triggers, it reminds you of your breathing too, and all of these different things that are counter adrenaline. All those things kind of kick in at the same time when you're already in motion and when you're already moving, and you know, when you get stuck in the same place, many people out there already adrenalized, and you get stuck in the same place, all of a sudden they're cemented to the ground, and your hands are they may be in that fence, but they're incapable or
concrete
or immovable. Your head and your neck muscles, you may not see the peripheral view of things. You may not be able to, you know, see what's going on in the vicinity as well. So, I mean, all of those things engaging, I find that it alleviates my own personal adrenaline dump.
Yeah.
When I have that adrenaline and I can trigger breathing, and I'm turning my neck and I'm engaged and I'm kind of in motion already.
Right.
I'm already ready to go should I need to be, as opposed to being stuck in place. And I don't think a lot of people tend to remember that adrenaline is a thing. It's a big thing. And when people are swearing at you and yelling at you and projecting this body language of aggression or conflict, it can be a pretty traumatic thing.
If you've never been, if you never experienced that, and somebody like, that could be very traumatic.
It can. Yeah, if it's not something if it's something that's new to you, it can be debilitating to a certain extent. So, I mean, that was another talk on the other end of the spectrum that we just had on the page too, about fine and complex motor skills and whether they actually deteriorate under duress, and whether they do for most people, or whether it's context dependent or individual specific. So those are also things, you know, what do you have accessibility to should those complex motor skills and fine motor skills deteriorate? Motor skill is also a thing. So, I mean, we have to decipher what tools in the toolbox are capable of being utilized under that duress and which ones are not. or does it depend entirely on the context? Is it entirely circumstantial and scenario specific?
Yeah, wow. Yeah, great stuff. Okay, I want to go into the book. We're not going to cover the whole book, of course, but I would at least like folks to get some idea that are watching of how incredible it is. That's where I got into it. But I'm going to focus on part one here. And folks, if you're watching, again, this is the book here. And again, highly recommended. I just got ambushed just with a gifted, just so many books by folks. I'm like so far behind. At any rate,
so that is my potential game changer in the industry. I have a lot of name people in the industry that have supported the book and come out and reached out about it. And I don't know if you'll believe me when I tell you this, but it took me 8 days to write the skeleton of that book. I knew exactly what I wanted to write about. Yeah. The skeleton, not the entire book. The rest.
No, I got it, but even still, I mean, just the skeleton. I'm looking at that.
It was something that I think had been on the agenda for about 20 years, and I knew exactly what I wanted to write about.
Okay, so you're able. Okay, all right.
And the book is not for everybody. It is generally, though beginners and medium time people can glean a lot from it. I think experienced people will gain a ton from it. I think it's one of those books that, without tooting my own horn, is my attempt at my industry game changer.
I think so.
You've skimmed through it, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I everything you're saying, yeah. Part one there. Again, let me just get back to here. You're mentioning basically soft and hard wiring. Okay.
Yeah.
And on the hard wiring, innate, intuitive, evolutionary. On the soft, development, cognitive, and that. Learn. Can you explain more on the difference and what you're trying to, as far as how you're trying to reach folks and what you wrote?
I think there are different ways of acquiring skill. I think we have trained skill that people impart to us. I think we have innate skill, something that's innate within the individual, that's individual specific. And I think we have evolutionary, those innate survival skill tools that we've all been blessed with. And that hone themselves to different levels depending on the individual, but they're all present. We all have them. One of the things that I always stress is that we have what we call a system 1 and system 2. We have system 1 where evolution kicks in. Let's say you're ambushed and somebody jumps you from behind. You're in survival mode. You're not thinking of training. You have to get to that training. So system 1 is the thing that allows you to do that. That's those evolutionary skills that we talk about. Threshold reflexes are enhanced. We super focus on the thing that's presenting the greatest threat, and we have to allow that system to take over to get to the level of training that we've achieved. So I mean, you're not thinking of doing a wrist lock on somebody when you've been ambushed or doing these things. You're in survival mode until you regain your balance, your feet, both literally and figuratively, and allow those training skills to kick in. So we have that evolutionary thing. We have those innate traits that people have, that they're fast, they're powerful, they're farm boy strong. They think faster than other people do under certain types of duress. So those are the things. Those are the three things that I was inevitably talking about with that aspect of the book. Is deciphering those three things and knowing that they can all work in unison together to really enhance your skill sets.
Okay. I mean, yeah. Okay. Stress. You also, you also, again, folks, highly recommend. Again, I'm just getting into it, but incredibly informative. the whole stress, you're talking about the hypervigilance, the informing, and then the activate. What can you, as far as that, those go in regards to stress?
The which part? Say
As
again.
far as you had the three aspects of stress, and one was informing, activate, and not being, I believe, used. Let me find it here. Hyper vigilant, informing, and activate. And this is in
I
regards to
I'll sum that up in one sentence that I usually use in regards to hypervigilance, and that is, don't look for what's not there, see what is. And what I mean by that is, people are constantly in the martial arts industry and the self-defense industry continuously paranoid about potential threats around every potential corner. And instead of looking for all of these things that aren't present, react to the things that are as they unfold. I think that's a very important thing. I'm not on hypervigilance when I go out all the time. I'm not constantly scanning. I'm not constantly profiling and looking at people in a certain way and reading every type of their body language. But I do notice the awareness signs of things that are potentially threatening, especially here. I mean, I'm a white North American and the only white North American living in a barrio that's lower to middle class and filled with nothing but Costa Ricans and Nicaraguans. So, I mean, my idea of going gray isn't there, but I'm still not jacked all the time when I go out.
Walk out the door, right?
I'm not jacked. I do notice things. I notice people staring at me for an extent period of time. I'm aware of people checking me out. One of the things on the page is I just gave a list of things that I do when I'm going to the store, walking to the store. There was a long list of things that I listed that I usually do. I wear shoes in case I need to make a hasty exit. The colors of the clothing that I wear, I dress down, I don't wear jewelry. Things like that are things that put me in a state of mind that the intangibles have already been taken care of. I don't have to worry about all these things that are going to unnecessarily draw attention to me. I'm not jacked when I go to the store. So all of my attention, because of those things that have been taken care of, I speak in Spanish to the store owner. I engage with the neighbors to know what type of crime is happening in the area, what are the methodologies that are being used, what's the latest on the recent crimes, where are the places where I need to avoid and what times those places are to be avoided for best chance of success. So, I mean, all of those things are things that once they've already been taken care of, I don't have to worry about them. So my attention goes to a specific place neurologically. I'm paying attention to those elements that are actually potentially there. I don't have split attention. Okay. So, I mean, that is the different levels of stress that we're talking about, is that, I'm not jacked when I go out, but I do notice things that are present that are viable.
Okay, in other words,
make a difference in my safety or my family.
No, you're going to notice if you're on somebody's radar. I mean, for instance,
yeah, but we get so many martial artists that live in very safe places.
Yeah,
that are hyper vigilant all the time.
I know.
That they go for coffee and they're I'm going to sit in the northwest corner of the building that's X type of distance from the kitchen. I'm going to be right near the exit. That to me is all bullshit. You're not enjoying your time with your family at that point in time. You're constantly being aware and conscious of different things that generally don't come into play. Yeah, so I guess that's what I mean. Is inevitably that sentence sums everything up in that particular chapter.
I like that. Yeah.
Don't look for what's not there, but see what's actually there. That's
actually
of importance.
I like that. Yeah. Again, I mean, I think that's part of the community that, and I'm just as guilty. I mean, depending on the people you listen to, and matter of fact, a lot of this come from the interviews here. Yeah, I go into a place, my back's to the wall, I'm taking in the whole thing, and find out that they live in a small town in the Midwest, and I'm just, just for example. But I guess finding that balance, you know what I mean, where you're not going too far where it's driving you nuts and your family nuts, and it's interfering with family time and just overall, pleasant lifestyle, or when maybe perhaps you're too laxative.
If you're hyper vigilant all the time, you're not going to see the thing that's important. That you're going to miss the thing that's actually important. It's not going to stand out to you. If you're constantly jacked all the time, my experience has been that I don't see the things that are prevalent. Okay. I tend to look at everything, and I don't notice the one thing that may be of actual importance when I'm coming across it. So I don't do those things even here, and I've been good for about 13 years already. Because I notice the things that are important. I'm not jacked all the time. So that's one of the things for me that I mean by that stress kind of level in the book.
Yeah.
The book is more designed for the mental, brain, cerebral experience of violence. So, I mean, anybody who wants to read it, you're welcome to it. It is high-level stuff, but it's accessible to anybody that wants to partake in it.
Yeah. All right. Informing, activate.
In what context?
And where you mentioned, I'm picking those three just again under the whole aspect of stress there. And that, what can you say? You kind of highlighted these three, and you spoke on the first one, but what about informing and activate in regards to stress?
I think it all ties together. Our system is going to inform us when something stands out. Those of us who are experienced and that have that level of experience, that we're familiar dealing with stress on a regular basis. And I don't mean daily stress. I mean the stress of being in a foreign, for lack of a better term, even figuratively, for being in a foreign environment. Okay. I have more stress living here than I do in Canada.
I bet.
It's inevitable, and it's one of those things that I've had to manage throughout the years, or you're going to be hypervigilant all the time naturally. But for me, it's important. I'm going to inevitably be informed by my particular system and how I function, and the experiences that I've developed throughout the years. My system will inform me when there's something important. And activation is one of those things too, where I need to get activated to deal with that kind of stress that's in front of me. I think stress is one of those things that's an absolute killer in martial arts. I think we learn to become stressed all the time, where we're constantly under duress and we're constantly looking for something and we're constantly honing our fight skills. And if we don't hone them on a daily basis or 4 hours a week or whatever the case may be, our skills deteriorate. And I don't think I have never experienced that to be the case for me. Okay. Stress is one of those things that I have to intentionally manage on a daily basis, both from the depression and from the environment that I currently live in.
Okay.
But apart from that, I think it's important to know that your system does a lot of things for you that are generally not acknowledged. We have a built-in safety system for keeping us alive and helping us survive trauma. It's innate. So, I mean, one of those things is knowing what those alarms are, and knowing when stress is prevalent and justifiable, and how to activate our system to deal with it, if that's the case that need be, and how we're going to deal with it, if that makes any sense.
No, it absolutely does. So do you think as a whole, regardless of the stimulus or the reason, we as practitioners tend to overstress ourselves?
Yes. I think that's unquestionable at this point. I think the example that you gave of the individual that lives in rural Montana, constantly being jacked up when he goes out with his
going
family
to a coffee shop and singing in the back corner.
it's completely unnecessary in your system. That's how things like heart disease and heart attacks and strokes happen. Without getting into the science of all of this, because that's not my strong suit, nor my forte. But those are elements that I think we have to learn how to deal with that and learn how to manage things. That's why, generally the classes that I teach now are fun. Even when there's heavy sparring or heavy contact or tension that's innately involved, there's that group dynamic that minimizes the stress that goes into that. And I think that's an important element that a lot of people tend to neglect. Sparring for a lot of people, or fighting, or we've done full contact stick fighting before. We've done live blade sparring with dulled folders. We've done all these things, Kubotan grappling and all of these things. And I think the more advanced prep that you have to become stressed about the event, the greater the lead up is going to debilitate your ability to perform. So I think that's very important. For me, we give a lot of debriefing, we'll say, before those moments come up, so that people have a chance to get used to it and becomes part of the class. Where sparring is, rare that it's not part of the class, or contact not present is a rare thing in the classes that I give. People are used to it. The group that we have are used to it, and they've become acclimatized to it, and they know that it's going to be happening, and they've gradually over time become de-stressed about it happening, and it becomes a fun element of participation in the class. And I think that element transmits very directly to real time as well. The more people are horrified of fighting or violence or the potential for it happening in a given area, the greater the buildup of stress, the less capability you're going to be able to show in performance. So
because it's going to be so taxing. Honestly, as you know, stress can be so taxing on you, and you're kind of wiped out before it's your turn up, because you've been just perseverating and in the corner waiting, and that's
why I think too, that in training, that's why I think for me, I've noticed that if you let people's natural skill shine through, with not a systemic perspective, but their natural ability to move, to integrate, to react, to go back and forth with somebody else. When you have that natural skill set, or that natural movement, and those micro elements that go into the tiny little thing that makes it go, I think you have the recipe for something that, when you have a lot of contact in your class, and you have a lot of sparring and a lot of fighting and a lot of grappling and a lot of what other these elements are, like you guys do the grappling with the blade as well. I think the more that you do that, more people become exposed to that stress, and it becomes less stressful.
Absolutely. I could definitely attest to that, the example you just gave, because most of my major is knife, and most of I'm doing, it's the lens of defense against it. Something I've always just been fascinated with it, so something I dialed in. But as far as stress, it does a number on me, to be quite honest. And just dealing with that. But I can honestly say, though, the benefit of that is the overall handling of stress, of course, and it's definitely gone down since whenever I started doing this. So that's fair to say. But
I think as I think it was Kurt said something about play, and I think play is hugely important to martial arts.
I gotta get these comments. Actually, there's a question that came in. Okay. Here's the question from me. Great stuff. Does your book speak to how the body stored and manifests trauma? More, does it address how cope and manage that?
I give some elements to deal with stress, and they're listed, I think, in chapter 1, right? I think with the Qigong and meditation and the things that they actually do for the body and whatnot. I do get into a little bit of that. Trauma, I try and stay away from. I am personally of the opinion that there are people in the martial arts or self-defense world that are capable and trained to deal with trauma. I don't feel that I am one of those people that wants to get into the trauma sphere within what I do. So I think it is probably addressed, but not in a very deep manner, if that explains things.
Yeah. And
But
then
I
you're
agree
fine.
with what Kurt said about play and fun. I think those are elements that are highly neglected in sparring, because sparring becomes
Gonna
this
be,
bridge, or
man.
fighting becomes this bridge
Yeah.
that you have to overcome, that causes all of this stress to manifest itself. And I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah. And then you leave and like you leave stressed because there was no fun play in it. And then, I think that could be kind of beginning and end depending on how much the frequency of that in your class setting. You know what I mean? And you might not have control of that pending the teacher or environment, right?
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. The freeze response. Okay. Um,
Yes.
what can you tell us on that?
I believe it's highly contextual. The problem is that you get a lot of people that have a freeze response on a very traumatic event that happens in their life, and they think that they could continually, well, I freeze. I'm a freezer. I'm somebody that continually freezes during every circumstance. But it's not the case. I'm going to be honest. I have had freeze responses during potentially violent altercations that have put me on the cold, on the ice, for lack of a better term. I've experienced that freeze during relatively minor events. And I've also had the opposite end of the spectrum, where I've been hunted or stalked by potentially dangerous people here, where I have performed incredibly well under duress and been totally calm and controlled. So I'm not going to be one of those people that sits here and says, "Oh no, for me, I mean, I can function entirely under duress." I mean, it is very contextual. It depends on the circumstances that led up to it. And one of the theories I have for me personally is that I tend to freeze when I'm responsible for the altercation. If I'm the one that contributed to escalating the potential conflict, it is wrong for me morally and individually to beat another person up when I've started it. It's something that goes against my moral judgment. So in those high event circumstances where there's been extremely high stress and potentially dangerous people involved, my ability to deliver violence is in a moral compass that I can facilitate.
Hence the freeze.
If that makes sense. So
It absolutely does make
I
sense.
have
Absolutely.
most of the time tended not to freeze when the elements have been extremely high order. I perform very well under stress for those things. I have not performed always well under lower order events where I am responsible for giving a guy the finger or pushing a guy or telling a guy to fuck off, when it's been my responsibility to be able to manage that scenario in a more efficient way. So if it goes against my moral code and my ethical code and the mindset, my mission statement on self-defense or on utilizing potential violence, I tend to freeze easier than I would where if the shackles are off, if that makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Yeah, I mean, like your moral code is interfering, and thus you're getting this freeze moment. It totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my theory for me. I mean, if there are people out there that disagree with that or have different experience, then that's your own. But that is what I have found out by doing a self-study throughout the years that I've lived here, is that the high event moments I tend to function very well when we've been picked out or targeted. And when I have been an active contributor to a low-level event that was generally unnecessary or something that I didn't need to participate in, I haven't performed that well.
That totally makes sense. I mean, because again, your value system, moral compass, you're interfering with
when
it.
Everything's aligned, it's easier to perform. Let's put it that way. If everything goes according to your mission statement and the mindset that you've cultivated throughout the years about when and why and how you're prepared to utilize violence, if everything is aligned, you have a greater chance of success by not freezing or by overcoming that freeze. That is what I have discovered personally about me. So,
I think that's no. Okay, we got in the frame, we got in the fence, and all that. I want to have you back on, and I want to cover more of this.
we can do that.
I think, yeah, it's a must. And again, I'm going to just make a concerted effort just to get through this. Again, I got swamped with books gifted to me. Very nice of people and all that, but I've just not gotten a chance just to get through them and read them and all that. So I'm going to be changing that. But I want to bring you back on sooner than later. So does
We
this
still have
time
to do the one with Tom and Mahipal as well.
Yeah, if they're willing to, oh my God, I would love to get you three on. That will be that would be amazing. You three on, that's gonna be like three brainiacs and then me. That's gonna be like yeah, I won't be nervous or anxiety feel for that one.
I think that would be a really good one though. That would bring a lot of people in to hear what the different perspectives are.
Oh my gosh, that would be incredible. Yeah, you three and then getting you back on. But generally speaking, around this time during the week generally works for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Anywhere from 11 till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, my time is generally good. Okay. Day dependent, but if you give me enough advance notice, I can.
No, which I would do. Yeah, which I would do. I'm going to go through it. I mean, because then my goal is to bring you back on where you can just speak freely on the parts and that. But I can absolutely see how the accolades that you received on this, just from the short, from the short section I'm getting currently have gotten through. But I would love to get into the behavior, part 3, decision making, linguistics, communication, part 4, part 5, application. Yeah. You up for that?
Yeah, we can do that. Sure.
Yeah. And so, but again, thank you for coming on. I'm a huge fan of yours. I always have been since we met. I have tremendous respect for you. And I'm so glad that you are doing so much better and that you're back. The community needs people like you. They really do. And I'm glad you're back, really.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a long road, but it's, I think we're starting to see the ice breaking at this point. So.
Yeah, well, God bless, and I'm going to keep tabs on you, make sure you're still around. But so, if I were to say 2 weeks, would that be fair to get you back around thereabouts?
2 or 3, probably. Yeah.
2 or 3. Let's say 3. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I'm writing it down right now. 3 weeks. All right. Well, Darren, as always, a pleasure. Next time I'll get you back. But now, did Mahipal mention anything about getting the 3 of you on? I know that was a while back, but did he mention anything in regards to that?
I think originally it was Mahipal that was kind of the glue that put everything together or established the idea that the 3 of us together would be a really interesting.
I think that absolutely
for a really interesting interview, and I think
it'd be incredible. What I'm going to do is, the only reason I'm asking because I'm going to start a group message with you 3, and just see if that's of interest. I know Tom is, as you probably know, is moving, so but I know he's around till the end of this month. So yeah, let me start a group message, and I would love to make that happen though. Yeah.
Tag me in a message on Facebook, and we can start communicating again. Or I think we actually.
No, I'm going to do it right now.
One with.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Darren. Thank you again. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's going to happen as long as
anytime,
other 2 are in agreement with you. We'll make it happen. But yes, you take care of yourself, and I'll be in touch soon.
Will do.
All right.
Thanks, Dean.
Take care. All right, folks. That wraps up 431 again. Definitely got this, and get the book he came out before that, which is The Battles Are Attrition, right here. Okay, yeah, again, definitely recommend. So check those out. All right, folks, I will see you next time. Thank you to those who jumped in, watched, commented, submitted questions. Until next time, who is next? This Saturday. Eugene again, who will be help coordinating with the interview, and it's escaping me, unfortunately, who is on next. But anyway, what I do know is it's 7 o'clock Eastern time Saturday. I do know that. So, but yeah, but also it's definitely posted on FMA discussion on top of the pin post. Who is going to be on this Saturday at 7. So check that out. It's always fun having Yuji on and all that. And I think actually Steve Millette from Canada might be jumping in as well. But yeah, I'm going to confirm all that. All right, folks. I will see you hopefully this Saturday. All right.